and welcome everybody, and thank you for trusting me with this little project. I just want to say that, being a member of the Board of Trustees for the American Folklife Center has been one of the highlights of my adult life, and the community collection grants presentation have been one of the highlights of my service on the board. They are so important and so precise in their work. I'm thrilled to be a part of this. So, one of the things that the American Folklife Center prides itself on, I think, is its ability to treat things in a thematic way. So here we are at the start of this morning's session, and it's going to be all about coffee. So I'm very pleased to introduce Russell G. Oliver. Russell is a photographer, a filmmaker, and an environmental planner specializing in cinematography, outreach and communication, project, visioning, and planning. And he is a proud contributor to the Britannica initiative. It's an initiative called the Time Lapse Project. He's also a founder of the interdisciplinary film and photography studio Pioneer Forum, which he established in 2012. Russell will be discussing his 2022 Community Collections Grant Project, documenting the stories, agricultural traditions, and culture of specialty coffee farmers in Puerto Rico. His presentation highlights specialty coffee farmers, their sustainable practices, and the preparation of coffee from seed to cup. It's going to be very interesting. So we'll really know the journey our coffee takes. It's also important to note that Russell made the film El Motor, Coffee in the Heart of Puerto Rico, which is based on his Community Collections Grant project, and it premiered as part of the AFC's 2025 Homegrown Foodways film series in June. And it currently enjoys over 40,000 views on the American Folklife Center Library of Congress YouTube channel. So please welcome Russell G. Oliver. We're happy to have him.
All right. My name is Russell Oliver. Yes, and this is Documenting the Stories, Agricultural Traditions, and Culture of Specialty Coffee Farmers in Puerto Rico. I do want to begin and thank you to everyone that's here this morning. I know the rain kind of kept some folks. I do want to thank Michelle, everything that you've done. I really appreciate and so grateful to be working with you throughout this time. All right, so this is Puerto Rico. I'm sure everyone's familiar with where it is out in the Caribbean Sea. And I want to start off with how I got into this project in about got into working in Puerto Rico. About 2017, I was invited to Hacienda Messini by my friend Douglas Pardue. He's a professor at the University of Georgia. And this picture, this is Hacienda Messini. This house here is over 150 years old. And this farm has been in his family for that whole time. There's Doug and Remy there on the top right, and Ildefonso on the bottom right. But yeah, when I first went there, I started meeting farmers. I started meeting Doug's cousin, who's Remy, who's now a farmer as well. And that's kind of how everything started there. And meeting Angela Messini as well, is in the top left, and who is the mother of Doug and owns Messini's coffee farm. So yeah, I just want to go over past documentation of coffee farms in Puerto Rico. Sort of inspired me in this journey. This is a picture of Edwin and Luis Rossman. They photographed workers on coffee plantations, tobacco farms, and sugarcane fields for the Puerto Rico Information Office. And then Jack Delano began working with the Farm Security Administration photography project 4142, and eventually ended up moving to Puerto Rico, where he spent the rest of his life. So I want to get into some coffee facts in case folks don't really know. Primary bean, the variety there is Arabica. Its history dating back to 1736 is a coffee of popes and kings because it was exported to Europe. It's a complex flavor profile. So I don't want to speak for every single coffee farm that's there because flavors can change depending on where they are. But it could be a sweet, dry fruit base, kind of chocolate undertones and hints of citrus, and a balanced acidity without any bitterness. I also do want to go into sort of this decline in coffee exports. So there's this shift from exports to local consumption. That started when the U.S. kind of came in when they first acquired Puerto Rico, and they set tariffs on Puerto Rican coffee, and it couldn't be exported to Europe anymore. Then right now, it's still going on with blending with imported beans, and the agricultural department brings in coffee beans because there's not enough on the island for everyone to consume. They're dealing with labor shortages, like a lot of farms are, high production costs, market control. There are a few large companies that own a vast majority of the farms there, and damage from hurricanes as well. So I want to begin by the project team that I set up with Karen Corion, Remy Rodriguez, and Gustavo Arroyo. Karen now works for NPR. She's a photographer and reporter. She's based in New York. And Remy and Gustavo are both coffee farmers within Puerto Rico. So to give you some context of where we started and kind of the areas that we covered, first was Jauco, and then Guayanilla, Maracao, Adjuntas, Lares, Utuado, Jayuya, Ciales, and you'll notice that all of these are in the southwest portion of Puerto Rico. That's where mainly most of the coffee is grown in most of these highland areas. And then ventured into San Juan too, where interviewed some other roasters and filmed some coffee shops and attended some coffee cupping workshops as well. I want to briefly go over kind of how starting this in case anyone's interested in forming this initial kind of production schedule. I wanted to set it up around their farming schedule, around like harvest. So the first goal was, doing the farmer and producer interviews, and then trying to film any of their traditional methods, and then any of their other farming methods that were next generation, and then the coffee production steps. And all of these on the bottom right, you'll see 1, 2, 3, and 4 coincide with kind of the bulk time where harvest is happening. And our process was pretty simple, going out to farms that we knew in the community that folks would be a good representation of specialty coffee farmers. They're already a pretty tight-knit group. And then filming them on their farms at location where they're most comfortable. So I want to go in a little bit next about some of these coffee farmers. Now, this is not all of them, but the first is Roberto Atienza, and he's a third-generation farmer. He's got 50 years of farming. He's one of Puerto Rico's first to modernize processing with advanced machinery. He's told me, don't think you're going to be rich doing this, but you'll be very happy in your life. And I really think that, he was a true gentleman. He would take the time for me and show me all around his farm any day of the week. I remember when I told Remy that I had met up with him and I was going to interview him, he's like, oh man, he said, that guy's coffee royalty around here. Like everybody knows Roberto, and he's helped so many people. So I was very honored to be able to share his story. Next is Joseph Giuliani. He's a third generation farmer as well. Spent a lot of time with Joseph. Spent the night at his house. He'd open up his home to me, where he'd cook me dinner and everything. I'm really, really fortunate to have a friend in him. And he would always go through, he'd have books and books and books on his Corsican roots, and he was very proud of that and where his family came from. He was an accountant, though, and retired, but he said he never really liked the profession. You know, he always wanted to be back at the farm where he was raised. You know, that has kind of forged his identity. Jose Morales was born on the farm we interviewed him. He's famous for saying in the film, I was born under a coffee tree. And despite some of his health challenges, you know, he would say things like, you know, I love this place and this pure air here has saved me. And I mean, he told, Remy was interviewing him, but he was telling us how, and these are some of the same things that Remy had said too, that, you know, in this mountainous area, that coffee is the economic engine. And without it, you know, people will leave, and that culture will leave as well. And that's kind of like the inspiration for why the film was called El Motor. And I will say that Jose is no longer with us. And I know this was spoken about yesterday. You know, these interviews, doing this kind of stuff is so important because, I mean, you never know, you know, what's going to happen. The next is Pablo Munoz. He would always preach, you know, and it's in the film as well, but in his interviews, quality over quantity. You know, that's how these farmers can compete, really, is that, because, you know, you've only got an island that's 30 miles by 100 miles. And it takes you 5 hours to get from one end to the other, though. But they can't compete with places like Colombia or, you know, other places in South America. So he also had a deep respect for Roberto Atienza, who helped him get equipment and get started. I think back in 2008, there was a crash, and that ended up, he had a construction business, Pablo did, that went under, and that's when he bought the farm, or he didn't buy the farm, but he started the farm at Hacienda Santa Clara. He opened up his coffee shop, Cuatro Sombras. He got help from Roberto because online he found a few blogs talking about Roberto Atienza and saw that as sort of this path forward to do specialty coffee. At that time, Roberto was the only person that was kind of holding Puerto Rico specialty coffee by a string. You know, he was one of the only few there around that time that was doing this. Next is Remy Rodriguez, a personal dear friend of mine. Represents a new generation and a hope for Puerto Rican coffee. He's an agronomist and a soil scientist, and he took over his family's abandoned farm that's in Guayanilla. It's about 300 acres. Last year, he won Taza de Oro, which is a golden cup, and that's a competition for the best coffee in Puerto Rico. I'm not trying to sell you on like his coffee or anything like that. I'm not an investor. He's just my friend. Everyone has great coffee, but I'm just telling you of his accomplishments. He's been rescuing heirloom varieties too. And one thing that stuck out with me on Remy is when we were talking about resilience and after hurricanes and things like that, and how you can kind of bounce back after those sort of things. And he said, well, if trees can do it, we can do it too. And he's always emphasized shade-grown coffee and that resilience in shade-grown coffee. Next is Gustavo Arroyo. His key philosophy is long-term health of the land. And he was saying, another thing he said to me was, we're not just growing coffee this year, we're caretakers for this next generation. He's a young man that's always kind of looking forward. He knows that, he's not going to be the only one doing this, and he's trying to think for a path forward for Puerto Rican coffee. And is always saying, this specialty coffee, he's totally invested. He knows he feels that it's the only way forward. He also, 2 years ago, he won Taza de Oro. He won the Golden Cup. Next, and probably one of my favorite interviews, was Gisele. And her interview actually came after I went back and was doing some extra filming for the film El Motor. I had Remy and I interviewed her together, and when we stepped away from it, he told me, he said, that's probably the most inspiring person he's met, and he didn't know her yet. But she learned about coffee from her grandmother, taught her traditional methods like sun drying on rooftops and roasting pots over a fire. She bought her family's neglected farm. She has critiqued discrimination and recounted times where she's been denied aid. I've got a quote where she said, I've lived discrimination in my own flesh. Agencies deny me help, but give everything to men with bigger farms because I'm a woman. Despite this, she was named Farmer of the Year last year and now has about 6,800 coffee trees. Yes, that is Gisele. So if you only look at one interview throughout the whole collection, find hers. Next is Luis Roy, lifelong dedication to coffee. He's fourth generation and learned from his father. He's joked about how caffeine runs through his veins and that coffee is just a part of me. But he's always thinking about legacy, just like his brother, and I'll show you next. He says, I hope the day that I'm not here, they can follow my legacy and the things that I can teach. Tato Roy, this is Luis's brother. He found his calling as a child. He's never wanted to do anything else than to be a coffee farmer. He's never wavered from it. He bought his family farm in the 1980s. And he's very proud of his brand. He wants to leave a legacy of hard work just like his brother does, but he's not consumed by profits or anything. He has said to me that a rich man is not the one who has a lot, but the one who needs very little. All right, I want to go through now a specialty coffee production process, just so everyone's familiar with how you get that, magical drink that's sitting in the back right now. So it starts with coffee seedlings. Now, in the top left here, you'll see these seedlings. They're grown in a sand bed, and this is at Hacienda Massini. Pictured here is Ildefonso and Ilsa. They'll take these seedlings and then transplant them into bags, and the grow bags. But they're set up with a program here at Hacienda Massini where they're also selling these coffee seedlings to other farmers. Coffee planting, this is at Rancho Contento, Gustavo's farm. This is Raul. He's planting some of those new plants, and they do contour farming. The contour planting, so to control erosion. But when they're first planted here, it takes about 3 years until they're mature, until they start producing coffee cherries. The planting density, this is Remy at his farm in Guayanilla. Fincus La Sombra. And here you can see it's very shaded. He's not in the full sun, but he'll be planting his, much like some of these other farmers too. It's like a 6-foot row and 4 foot apart, but he's doubling his density so that he can have a higher yield. Quality control and maintenance. Typically you're using machetes to clear vegetation rather than spray herbicide. Now there are some farms out there that do it, but everyone that I'm trying to include in this project that's doing specialty farming, they're usually doing a chop and drop method. So they'll chop the weeds, drop them where they lay, and that helps keep the soil cooler, helps keep moisture in, and helps control erosion as well. Next is harvest. So this was a couple of screenshots from the film. You'll see in the top left, there's Joseph. This is around 4:30 in the morning. I'd stay with him. We'd get up about 4 a.m. To go out and get workers and head through his farms. He has about 600 acres throughout Guayanilla and Jauco, and they're only accessible through his farm roads. So it would take a little while to get to some of the places where we're going to harvest. So, and then I wanted to show this as kind of an example of what the fellows are holding on to as they're harvesting. You've got a bucket on your left. You've got a basket on the right, far right, and in the middle you've got a basket that's been repaired with a bag. So these are kind of mostly the things, and then they'll use like an old seat belt or something like that to hold their bags to pick cherries. Oh, and I do want to go back, notice that they're wearing long sleeves, long pants. It is hot out there, but you've got so many insects, ants, everything that's going to be crawling all over you. You want to stay covered as much as you can. And then the high, knee-high boots as well. I feel like, I don't know how the terrain there was so steep and so muddy. I mean, and I'm carrying all this equipment and trying to film and photograph these guys. But I feel like they have something in them that's more mountain goat than I am. So they might have to grab a hand to get help up a steep hillside. Well, you see here, this is Alejandro picking some coffee cherries. With specialty coffee, it's hand-picked, and you want to pick the red cherries. You don't want to leave the green. And they're hand-baking them one by one. And if you don't pick them all that morning, then you're going to go back 2 weeks later to get the other ones, and 2 weeks later to get the other ones. So it's very labor-intensive. There's no mechanization whatsoever. Next is wet mill processing. So some farmers that don't have the equipment like the pulpers, they choose to sell to other farms that have depulping equipment. This picture here on the left, this is a facility owned by Luis Roy, and where many folks will come and bring their truckloads of coffee to sell to him, and he'll do the processing. This is some inside shots of that processing center in Maricao, and these coffee cherries are coming up. Willow here is sorting through them, picking out all the sticks and leaves before it goes through the depulper. All right, wet mill processing. This would be done by hand if you're not doing any mechanization. And then it's sun-dried, dry for several days to weeks on patios, and constantly raked and turned. And then here's some more shots of that. After that, you have the dry mill processing, where is taken out of that husk, and you have the green bean. This picture here, this is Joaquin showing off his green beans. They're in a cool, dark place, in airtight bags in a dry area, and they're usually, from here, they can be preserved for around 6 to 12 months. And then from there, you go on to roasting. Oops. Sorry. All right. So that project ended up with being 28 interviews and a little around 2,000 photographs. This list on the left is everyone that was involved, not everyone that was interviewed and as well as photographed. I do want to talk about some project setbacks and things that we had. Hurricane Fiona came through at that time. We had places where there'd be landslides or roads that were totally blown out, or this power line that was over Rancho Contento. You couldn't even get through the driveway, and that took 2 months to get the power line out of the driveway. And you see here on the right, I couldn't even reach one of the farms because the road was completely blocked by a landslide. So some other kind of learning outcomes is, you can get stuck in the mud very easily on some of these farms. Thankfully, I had Edo Fonso come and pull me out, but in the process, this happened. Mud everywhere. You need to read your signs wherever you are. Caution, road damage. Even though I had 4x4, you still, sometimes you can't make it out. So it's good to have friends. Another thing here, I would want to point this out, is on the far right. So this is a coffee tree, is someone's hand pictured there. When a hurricane comes through Puerto Rico and it's blowing around and blowing these coffee trees around, it'll create this bowl here for that tree. And that's the sort of damage that can be done by high winds. So I'm getting a thing that says I'm ending right now. I do want to say one more thing, though. This is important. This is Luis Bengochea, his father and his mother. This picture here is in the Library of Congress. It's also in Cuatro Sombras. That's Don Manuel Bengochea. This is Luis Bengochea, his grandson. Now, I wanted to show you a bit of the film, but I will direct you to go watch it. It is El Motor, Coffee in the Heart of Puerto Rico. So thank you for your time.
So, thank you, Russell, very much. We're going to head now from Puerto Rico to Albuquerque, and I'm happy to introduce Yvette Storr, and I spoke with her and her husband a little earlier, and we may have run into one another on the San Juan River in southern Utah 30 or 40 years ago when I was a river guide and they were canoeing on the San Juan. And I didn't tell you, we picked up a lot of canoes that would wrap themselves around rocks in some of the rapids in the Upper Canyon, but I don't think that we picked up there. So I'm so happy to be introducing Yvette, who is presenting her 2024 Community Collections Grant Project, Sustaining and Reclaiming Cultural Danzas, Los Matachines y Los Camachitos. As a New Mexico resident now for almost 40 years, her maternal lineage connects to original land grant settlers in Cañón de Carnú, or present-day Carnuel. Yvette serves as a land grant genealogist for Carnuel, for that land grant, and previously worked in the defense avionics industry before pursuing genealogy and documenting New Mexico history, culture. And a lot of people don't know it, but there's a really close connection between avionics industry and cultural history. A lot of people move from that discipline to the other. She is a member of the board, or has served on the board of the New Mexico Genealogical Society as the chairperson for an important program called Primeras Familias de Nuevo Mexico, which used primary resources to certify family lineages back to 1598. So we're going to learn more about her project documents, and her long-standing dance traditions of the Hispanic communities in small villages along the Turquoise Trail of New Mexico. So please welcome Yvette Storr.
Hi everyone, good morning. Thanks for coming out in the rain to see. You get a little bonus here of what a tumbleweed looks like in New Mexico. It's my hair. I'm not used to humidity. But thank you all for coming, and I want to thank the American Folklife Center for presenting this opportunity to people in the United States to present their culture, and the Library of Congress. It's been a pleasure working with my liaison, Nancy. I don't know if she's there. She is. And Jason, even though he tortured me quite a bit, and Rebecca and John. It's been a pleasure. And I want to congratulate also the other recipients, because it's a huge thing. I'm very happy for all of us to be able to have this opportunity. And I'm also like your brother and sister in pain, once again referring to metadata. So, oh, and then I just want to clarify two things from yesterday. If you weren't here for those presentations, they were incredible. They were so good. But the lowrider did originate in New Mexico. Okay? To start off, I have a little film, 5-minute film, to show you and introduce you to my project. It kind of will give you an overview. It's kind of hard to put a year and a half encapsulated, 250 items, but this will give you an overview, and then I'll step back into my slide presentation. Thanks.
Throughout New Mexico, there are Hispanic villages that struggle to carry on the long-held tradition of the danzas de los matachines, los comanchitos, and los comanches. Los Matachinas danza is performed on dates during fiestas honoring the patron saints of their affiliated mission churches. Los Comanchitos and Los Comanches are revived danzas that are performed in remembrance of the assimilation of Indian captives, cautivos, into families and villages, and acknowledging Genízaro identity. The leaders of these groups persevere to educate and involve current generations to remember and carry on the deeply held bond within these communities. My prayer is that we continue to do so. Over time, piece by piece, our traditions and culture are slowly vanishing. Some of our small New Mexican villages are fighting to maintain their way of life and carry on long-held traditions. Witnessing this, it was important to document and preserve them. We recognize the contemporaries who are working to maintain and reclaim the stories of our shared history in their voices, their personal experiences. This project seeks to create a permanent record of how these rich and vibrant communities are honoring their past and celebrating their present. During the past year, we've been documenting the fiestas celebrating the patron saints at the mission churches located in the mountains east of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Carnuel, Escobosa, Cañoncito, San Antonio, San Antonito, and Chilili. We completed our filming on New Year's Day 2025 in Ranchos de Taos to document Los Comanches de la Serna. Spending time in each of these communities, we have gained an even greater appreciation for their spiritual devotion and dedication to remembering our past and carrying on traditions in challenging times and changing environments. Our focus was on the small mission churches that are in more remote areas, with attention given to the roles, the meanings, traje, traditional dress, and importance to community. With continued education, we hope to encourage interest and pride in our shared history.
Okay, again, the title of my collection will be, of course, my name with Sustaining and Reclaiming Cultural Danzas. I did, during the year, cover 2 traditional dances in New Mexico. One that has been sustained for a very long time, and that's the Los Matachinas. And I know originally when I posed this program, we know that there is information out there already, like it's rooted in Las Moriscas, which is out of Spain, and that was a carnivalesque dance that was originated when the Spaniards conquered the Moors, pushed them back out, and they were able to practice Christianity again. But it moved to the United States and the New World. It was brought here by Hernan Cortez, who is a conquistador, and he utilized the dance, which to demonstrate the balance between good and evil, or the fight between good and evil. And when he arrived here, he was given a Natural native, and her name was Malintzin, and she's a Malinche. So we go into, within this project, what we're adding, and is a huge benefit, I think, is that we interviewed the people that were actually doing the dance. There's danzantes, there's a monarca, there's a Malinche, there's an abuelo, there's a play. There's a whole series of events that happens. It's not just the dance. It starts on a Friday night with vespers, or vísperas, which are whispers. And it's a novena that is prayed for the saint of that mission church. And I think it's important to note that these mission churches in these small villages were built by the hands with the material from that area and that village, and it wasn't funded by anyone. They did it. Now, I don't know about all missions around, but in New Mexico, that's the way it happened. And so it was the center of their, of their life, the church, and these fiestas were passed down. These dances were passed down. So we've added the ensaya play, the vísperas. I'm going to show you a pretty picture here. This is something more interesting to look at. But we actually detailed everything that's part of the danza. And when I say we, it's the participants. So the cupil that they wear on their head, the palma that they wave, what does that stand for? Even my mother, my grandmother didn't know what they represented. So they were, you know, and they were brought up, we were all brought up in this tradition. And what I loved about the mountain villages is that, even though I appreciate John saying that I've been there for 40 years, because that would mean that that's how old I am. But I've been there lived here in New Mexico my whole life. And in fact, I'm 15 generations in New Mexico. And so I've never left, my family's never left. And so when I was a little girl, I remember this dance, and they actually used to, the matachin used to scare me, but I really wanted to know. I moved back to the mountain. I went away for school, not away, but in state. When I came back and I went to the fiestas, they were exactly the same in the mountains. And I was just amazed. The music, everything was exactly the same. And so the ability for them to maintain that, I wanted to know how and why these young people were keeping up this tradition. So the collection will contain everything from the fiesta, the vísperas is a procession. Then the next day they have a mass, and then they have a procession again. And the ensaya, which is a very interesting play, which is detailed in the collection. And it definitely, you know, you have to remember that throughout history, and we're talking 1500s to, you know, of course now, the people back then didn't know how to read. Most of them were illiterate. In fact, most of them probably didn't go past 3rd grade, 6th grade. And so the way they learned was to watch these things. And so the battle that's shown in the Asaya is the toro is the devil or evil, and then we go into detail that the danzantes are 12 that represent the apostles, and the monarca represents Montezuma II. And the Malinche, she is goodness. And at first, because she was actually the person in history that her and Cortez, they betrayed Montezuma and then he was killed. She was villainized, but then I noticed in my studies that the change occurred, that the Malinche was no longer villainized after the miracle or the milagro of Our Lady of Guadalupe appearing to Juan Diego. And this is a 11-year time span. And just in my research and everything, I realized, oh my gosh, because if you go to Mexico right now and you call somebody a Malinche, it is not good. It's a bad word. So somehow when the Aztecas accepted Christianity, the miracle of Our Lady happened, I feel like in my mind that that's when that perception was changed of the Malinche. So we detail the roles, the traje, the regalia, the meaning, all the different roles, and they're described not only by interviews, but also by transcripts and actually an actual description. We go through and we describe all the different pieces of the dance, the primera, the cruz, the cambiada, the vuelta, and the toreada del toro. And we have films, complete films of all of these events as they happen. The second dance that it's a reclaimed dance. and it's not widely known at all. And this is kind of the untold story of the Genízaro. Has anyone heard that word before, Genízaro? Yeah. The Genízaro is the mixture of the Spanish and the native. And in my world, when I was introduced to it, I assumed that it was the natives that had willingly converted to Christianity. It wasn't until much later that I discovered the cautivo, which is a captive. So it's well known in history that the Apache and Comanche were fierce enemies. And in the 1700s, they would kidnap. They would raid each other's tribes, kidnap, and then sell them to the Europeans for sugar and coffee. And so in that particular dance, we actually sing those words in Spanish. And we're actually commemorating this culture that almost every New Mexican has in their history. And that is that, of course, the conquistadors came through Mexico. They did not bring any women. And of course, most of us have Native American blood. And DNA testing, we have also in this collection an expert in New Mexico that we talked to that provides the statistics for how many, it's like 90%, 95% of New Mexicans that have tested their DNA. They have 30% plus Native American. And so what this dance has done is reclaim that identity. It's done by the descendants of these Genízaros or cautivos, and it stands at the end. The thing that's very moving is that we call out to the ancestors that we knew were captives, were traded. And what I discovered during this year and a half, I met a lot of people that wanted to become part of this tradition because it was explaining a lot of their past and why they had the emotions that they did. And it's given them a reason to explore further their heritage. I'm really excited that I received this grant because that now, the time is now. What I noticed during the interviews is that not everyone, you had the experts that I interviewed and they would have certain pieces. Then I would interview another expert and they would have different pieces. And you just realize that for every generation, because it's an oral tradition, we're losing vital pieces of this. I really feel like this collection has the most complete picture that I have seen. But I think it's really important what the Library of Congress is doing now, and that's to go out to the communities and make sure that they're the ones that are documenting. Thanks. Moving forward, in fact, we can talk, I'm sure somebody will ask this in the questions. I just want to add that the treasures of this collection, we added, you saw a book that is being opened. There are so many things that El Comanche there up in the right-hand side, we were able to acquire his whole collection of songs that are not written. They're sung. He actually explains the meanings behind them before it, and they're all uploaded in this collection. He is a treasure to us in New Mexico. The other valuable thing, the Hermandad participated in this collection, which is, if any of you have ever heard the penitentes, they don't talk to anybody, but they granted me an interview. And so that is also part of the collection. To understand what a penitente is, I encourage you to Google it. But moving forward, I'm really excited. I've been invited to be a featured presenter at the New Mexico Genealogical Conference in October, and I'm going to share what I learned on this adventure, the metadata, I mean, just the way to collect things. And so I'm really grateful and I'm thankful, and the music's playing like at the Academy Award. So.
Well, here we are, not between two ferns. So we'd like to open up questions to the audience, if there are any, but maybe, well, go ahead, Heather, please.
I have a question for Russell and one for Yvette also. My question for Russell was whether or not your collections extended documenting folklore, traditional wisdom around the natural world, if any of that came through. And then for Yvette, it was about the music. Is there music that accompanies the processions, the music that's played at the masses? I was just curious. Since there's dance, I assume there was music. So those are my questions.
Is this working? Okay. Can you explain to me what you mean in natural world, just so I get it right?
Sometimes, oh, sorry. Wisdom is passed down about when to plant and just sort of things that people accumulate over time about the growing of the coffee beans, historically. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. Yes. You're talking about that it was passed. You're talking about passed down knowledge of planting seasons.
Yeah, but you mentioned what I think it was Giselle, her grandmother teaching her how to dry the beans on the roof and roasting beans over open fire. So more of that sort of traditional knowledge. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that traditional knowledge, I would say, for every coffee farmer has been passed down through one way or another, either through parents or grandparents or mentors. You know, Remy being a first-generation farmer, even though his father's a doctor, but he had a mentor that he met when he was in college that taught him all of the things that he knows. There was another coffee farmer. But yeah, I have seen that, you know, generationally that does get passed down, all of that knowledge.
Terrific. Oh, go ahead.
So yes, the musicos are definitely documented. We talked to all of them. There's generally in the matachinas, there's a violinist and a guitarist, and they accompany the danzantes throughout the whole procession. And then the ensaya, which is after, they also continue to play through each. There's certain songs that they play for every different piece of the play. And it's all passed down by ear and orally. I've seen a little bit of written music, but that's how the musicians that I interviewed, they learned from their elders. Yeah.
I do want to add one more thing that I thought of too, that it's not just passed down by elders to a younger generation. Even Gustavo and Remy, the newer things that they're doing, they've found that some of these older farmers that haven't been doing some of these things have been coming to them and asking them, hey, how are you doing this? Why is your coffee cupping score higher than mine? How can I have a better coffee too? So they'll be coming to them about some of the things that they're doing that they might have learned elsewhere. And they're also not just in Puerto Rico. Like I know for a fact that a few of these they'll travel to South America to workshops to gain knowledge from there and bring it back to the island.
You know, kind of along that line, I thought it was an interesting nexus between traditional stewardship and modern science with the newer coffee farmers there too. Yeah. Gustavo and Remy. I mean, I know I keep saying their names but they are two of the most that I would say that experiment a lot in their coffee, whether doing a natural process, a washed process, or a honey process.
and are really doing some kind of amazing things. Even when they're rescuing these heirloom varieties as well, it's really, I think, kind of benefiting Puerto Rican coffee because it's boosting that quality as well. And that's the thing where they have to compete, because they can't compete with these other places on quantity, so they have to boost the quality.
Great. Any other question? We've got a question in the back, and then we'll come to you, sir.
This is probably going to be a comment rather than a question, so I'll just tell everybody that first. I first wanted to thank Yvette and Russell for the wonderful work that they're doing. I think these are both really important projects, as have been the projects we've heard about thus far. Yvette, I was going to tell you, I am a contemporary Comanche captive, so I'm really interested in the stuff that you're talking about right now. Comanche Nation still uses that language. I've had people say, oh, that's horrible. No, it's not. If you'll listen to our chairman, we continually talk about that. Comanches are taking captives all the time because Comanches see the value of useful people, right? But I wanted to recommend a couple of things to you. First, later I'm going to tell you a story when we get a moment that was shared with me by some Huichol people, Puerto Rico people, about La Noche Triste that I think you'll find very interesting because they've got some interesting oral traditions about that. But I also want to recommend a poet and novelist to you and to the Library of Congress, Irene Lara Silva, who was the Texas Poet Laureate. But the way she depicts mestizaje, the woman writes like Salvador Dali paints, and as a writer, I just wish I could do this, right? But I think she's got some really rich work that I think you will find complements what you're doing, and I think you'll just find to be very, very interesting. But I wanted to bring her up. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name.
Kimberly Weezer Weryakwe. My husband's last name means the motion a man's body makes while riding a horse.
Are you presenting later?
I'm presenting later,
Oh,
yes.
I can't wait.
Thanks.
I just wanted to impart to you that it's interesting to me because, of course, we know that slavery's gone on since the beginning of time. And, of course, my heritage is Apache. And when I did my DNA test, and my mother did it, my father did it, that's what made me dig deeper. And I was very lucky because an academic at the archives in New Mexico actually found the record of my fifth great-grandfather was taken when the Spanish were conquering and in New Mexico. He was one of 5 children that was under the age of 5 that was taken in after a village was taken. And so he was brought up as a Genízaro. He accepted Christianity. The very heartbreaking thing for me that I found out was before he was 40 years old, because New Mexico, the governance would develop these villages around the main Spanish settlements, and they were made up of Genízaros because they figured they can communicate with the raiding Apaches. But what happened was, for my fifth great-grandfather, he was actually killed by Apaches in one of these villages. And so we have the records, and so, people ask if I, get bitter. It was part of the life in New Mexico back then. It was mainly native tribes stealing from each other. Yes, the Europeans, when they conquered, yes, they took in whoever was left. But in Santa Fe, in the eastern side of New Mexico, they had trade fairs all the time, and it was lard, beans, whatever people had. And what's beautiful about this collection is that the people that descend, they tell the stories. They say, that's just the way it was. We would raid them, they would raid us. And children were taken, and women were taken. So it's a very personal story for New Mexicans. And I'm not, I never would want to call out anyone as a villain in this, because for me, it's about becoming stronger in what each of our individual races, whatever we are, all of them have been through something, and it just makes us stronger. And so I want to honor that memory. That's my main thing. You saw my last name is Cohn. The Jews, the whole thing, I could go on and on. But, it's one of those things where it happened, but to me, it's our responsibility to honor it and treasure it and remember it, not to forget. Sorry.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. All right. Not a problem. That's why we're here. All right, sir.
Well, I also wanted to thank both of you for these extraordinary presentations and all the amazing work you did, and how grateful I am just to be in this room with everybody here and the staff, and what's being done is so extraordinary and so important. My background is in public broadcasting and the attacks on public broadcasting. These are the kind of stories that we've been trying to tell since the beginning, you know, for 40, 50 years. And it's just phenomenal to be here. My question is for each of you to say either one moment during your project that really rang a bell and changed you a little bit, or just overall, how did you get changed during doing the work that you did?
Became a better planner with my time, for sure. If you've got something, you go ahead. I'll think about it.
For me, that I live in this environment, was brought up in this environment, I didn't always respect the tradition, and I think, unfortunately, that's the case with our youth now. They are so involved in the digital world, they don't look back at where they came from and what their ancestors did. That really struck me. And so now, moving forward, I am going to, my husband and I are taking all this collected material and recreating a documentary. And I want to share it with the area schools, the museums, because I think it's really important that we remind our youth where they come from and what our ancestors went through to get us here. And so the value, to me, it really hit me hard. And one of the moments that I loved so much was talking to some 16 to 18-year-old danzantes. And when they talked about it being part of their soul, part of their spirit, part of who they were, it gave me hope. Gave me hope. I thought, wow, you're getting it. And so I think that was probably the moment, was talking to the young people and seeing that, oh, wow, there's more to them. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, you know, there are youth out there that appreciate their history, and that's critical, I think, for us as, you know, the human race, you know?
Yeah, I will talk, when you're talking about youth out there, one thing that struck me was seeing how, you know, third and fourth and fifth generation some of these farmers are, and how proud they are of the work that they do. And it is a little sad that sometimes you come across some of them that their children don't want anything to do with farming. But then I'd say there's another half of them that they do have children or grandchildren that are doing farming, that are interested in that. So, you know, but yeah, going back to planning on time and just, you know, being a better filmmaker and photographer was one thing that kind of, you know, this project helped me with as well. Carrying 30, 40 pounds of gear up and down mountains in the mud, in the rain, it's no easy feat.
Good. We've got a question. Natalie, and the microphone coming your way.
Checking. Okay. Yvette touched on what her plan is for the future of her collection. So Russell, I was just wondering, within Puerto Rico, do you have a plan for housing or exhibiting the materials that you collected?
Yeah, Ribby and I are working together now. He's on the board of a nonprofit that is called Pro Cafe, and they work directly with coffee farmers. So we're working now to exhibit the film and a lot of the images and interviews and things like that. So that's in process. The other future thing is, like, the film did get for the official selection for the International Puerto Rican Film Festival in New York. So if you're in New York in November, check that out. I want to go. I want to see it on a big screen. You know, it's a lot. It'd be a lot different experience than just watching it on your phone, like most people do. So yeah.
A question in the back there.
Hi, this question is for Russell. Russell, so I noticed during your presentation you mentioned during the harvest season specifically, you said something about going out to find workers. And I think you used the word find. And I'm curious if you could elaborate a little bit about how do the farmers get the hands that they need? Is it not a known group of people, or do they go out and find them each day? Like, how does that work?
You're talking about when I was with Joseph, and then we were going out to get the workers to go.
To get the workers?
Yeah.
Is it people they know? Or?
Yeah, he already knows the pickers, and that's seasonally. He has some workers that are on his farm throughout the whole year, but then there are some that are just there during the harvest. And he knows them. They live right down the road or up the street, and but those change from year to year. And I will say, you know, one thing that Joseph told me, he said he would be happy to pay them to work all day, but they usually don't want to. They'll work 3 or 4 hours in the morning, and then that's it, and be happy with that. Do you want to know more details about pricing and their wage and why they're comfortable in just that?
I mean, I don't need anybody's social security numbers or anything. I was just curious because I think, however you phrased it, it gave me the impression that that there was a process where they were just looking kind of for random help. You know?
Oh, what I mean? No, it's not random.
Yeah.
They're very particular too. Like most farmers are particular about who's working on their farm, who's picking, because they don't want just anyone to go in there and take the limb and just strip all the cherries off of it.
So they have a relationship with the.
Yeah, they have a relationship with
That's what I was
with that person, and you know. Yeah, so it's not just random people at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have one more. We have time for one very quick question in the back, please, and then we're going to wrap things up for this session.
I want to know why they're satisfied to work a few hours in the morning. What a concept of enough.
I'm glad you asked that. They say, this is directly from the words of Joseph, though, and my own observations, but they seem to be happy with government subsidies that come to them and are just fine with the rest of it. They just need a few hours of work in the morning to get $30 or $40 for that day, and that's it. The rest of their lifestyle is usually subsidized. But that's for those pickers in that instance in Joseph Giuliani's farm and some other farms as well. But that's from what I've experienced, yeah.
All right, thank you. I think we need to wrap things up. If you have other questions for Yvette and Russell, you can probably find them during the break. I just want to thank both of you for your work and your presentation. This work is so important to your community and to our nation and the world. I'm so grateful to you for everything you've done for us, so thank you.
Thank you.